Okay, folks, so grateful to have you here on the show. I'm going to introduce our guest for today, Mr. Will Archer. Will is the lead evangelist for the Potomac Valley Church in Woodbridge, Virginia. He has over 2 decades of leading in missional communities. He's really known for his capacity to develop and to amplify theologically sound and culturally relevant messages across many different platforms. And we're going to talk about that with him today. But also for really developing healthy communities of faith that engage both the local community around them as well as within the church. And that means, connecting with the business world, connecting with local community partners who are serving the poor. He serves as the chairman of the Human Services Alliance of Greater Prince William. He has an undergraduate in public policy from Arcadia University, a master's degree from Wesley Theological Seminary, and he is currently a doctoral candidate in educational ministry with a focus on educational leadership at Virginia Theological Seminary there in Alexandria. On top of all that, he is the host or the co-host of his podcast, the Greater Everyday podcast. And I'm sure there are a dozen other things he's doing that we'll find out about. But Will, good to have you on the show.
Hey,
I don't know how you're doing all
here.
that, man.
Hey,
You are
bro,
a busy
we all
guy.
just give the best we've got, and I know you're doing a whole lot where you are too. So that's just
Yeah, well,
how it goes.
I think you're definitely ahead of the curve in terms of capacity. Somehow you're managing all that. It's pretty inspiring. And on top of that, you're a husband and a father, and you've got a whole other side of life
That's
that you're also managing and leading and serving, and it's incredible.
well, I'm very very grateful. God's been very kind.
Yeah, well, we're grateful to have you on the show. I'd love for you just to start off, just kind of walk us through a little bit of your spiritual journey. And, this is a show that's kind of intended for followers of Jesus, but also for those who are maybe just interested in following Jesus or skeptical about what it means to follow Jesus. And
Sure.
so it'd be good just to kind of hear in brief, what's been your spiritual journey? How did you arrive even at beginning to follow Jesus?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very grateful. I have an amazing family, and my dad is Jamaican. My mom is American, and my dad came to the U.S. To get his doctorate from Northwestern. And while he was at Northwestern, he converted to Islam. So I grew up in a Sunni Muslim home, um, and my mom's Catholic. My dad grew up Seventh-day Adventist, so very uh, deep religious tradition in Christianity from my parents' background. But my dad's decision to become a Muslim was really formative for me, and so I grew up speaking English and Arabic as a child, and my dad taught in Saudi Arabia for a little while, and then while we were there, my dad passed away from prostate cancer, and I ended up going to boarding school in England, where for the first time I read C.S. Lewis's books, The Chronicles of Narnia, and that really introduced me from a fictional standpoint to the story of the Bible. Um, and a few years after really getting obsessed with the Chronicles of Narnia, I started reading the Bible, and I met Jesus in the scriptures for the first time, and that radically changed my life and started me on a journey to really pursue who Jesus is. And when I was 18 years old, I got baptized in New York City, and really embraced a life of biblical discipleship. So it was a long journey of walking through my faith as influenced by my parents, influenced from what I read, both in fictional books and in the Bible. And but I will say that once I met Jesus in the Bible when I was 12 years old, um, and then I committed to being a disciple of Jesus when I was 18, that transformed everything and has transformed everything about my life. And my whole life's purpose
Wow.
was reoriented, not so much by religion. Um, I am a religious person, but by Jesus. and that's really the driving force for me.
Wow, that's amazing. So, okay, so just so I'm tracking, Jamaica, Saudi Arabia, New York.
Yes.
Wow. That and Muslim background to C.S. Lewis to follower of Jesus. That is a pretty unique path to this apprenticeship of Jesus. Um, it's pretty cool. And it's, I guess, from that point on, there was an interest in ministry, or did you kind of immediately know, hey, I want to start figuring out how to do this more full time as a vocation, or how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, it was the wildest thing. I mean, not long after, getting baptized, I had the opportunity to really connect with some of the guys who had studied the Bible with me, and I was particularly blown away by their faith and their commitment to really living out their discipleship in New York. I got baptized back in '93, and and the fact that there are people that are willing to devote their lives to spreading the gospel and really helping other people to know who God is, that really caught me very early on. Um, I didn't get the opportunity to be in the ministry until almost 5 years later. Um, and I went to school, I worked, I served in a volunteer capacity in various different ministries. Um, and But I definitely very early on got a passion to want to do the ministry, to really try to do my very best to use my limited gifts to be able to fulfill Jesus' mission. And so that really grabbed me. And kind of going back to my early formation, when I was 8 years old, I had the opportunity to go to Mecca and to Medina
Wow.
in Saudi Arabia. And when I was in Mecca, one of the things that struck me was seeing all these pilgrims circumnavigating the Kaaba, just hundreds of thousands of people. And it was an image that's forever kind of burned in my mind. And I feel like in our world today, people are constantly circumnavigating so many things, places of worship, ideas, ideologies, and really seeking to grasp where God's directing them. So I
Hmm.
have a deep and profound respect for the Muslim community,
Yeah.
because in the Muslim community, I see my father. I see so many people that I know that are generous and kind and loving. Um, but I realized that as I looked at the scriptures, that um, God was really calling me personally to follow Jesus and to address this whole issue of what are we circumnavigating and where are we really trying to get to.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like even as a young, as a young boy, that what an illustration of devotion. Like what
Right,
an illustration of what does it look like to be a pilgrim, and
right,
to be devoted to a path. Uh,
right.
I'm sure that played some, formation in your worldview, even as you approached Jesus,
Yes.
some a decade later or however that worked out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely did. And I think I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for my parents and their investment in
Yeah.
really challenging me to have my own opinions, my own thoughts, my own conviction. And I think for all the people that are listening, particularly for those who have not made a decision to commit to any specific path, or maybe have real reservations or questions about Christianity or about faith in general, I think it's really important to recognize that God really does direct our lives, and He really is trying to draw each one of us on a very unique path to really walk with Him. And so, this idea of pilgrimage, you're right, is a massive part of my own kind of understanding of God.
That's great. I love it. Well, and now I know you obviously, like you shared, about 5 years into your discipleship, you
Hmm.
started working in ministry as a vocation, and now you're in a doctorate program. That's led you quite a ways down the road, and knowing a little bit of your story, you've served in different places around North America, and
Hmm.
I think at one point you were back in the islands, right, serving
I
in
was.
ministry. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the opportunity. Yeah, so we Tasha and I both, as single people, started out in the ministry um, in Atlanta, leading singles. So a big shout out to you,
Yeah.
and great work that you do with the single service team. And
Yeah. We love singles
um,
ministry.
yeah, so which is awesome. So we got the opportunity to do that. From Atlanta, we went to Macon, Georgia, and served in the ministry there. From Macon, Georgia, we went to Philadelphia, served with the youth ministry there. And then we got to go to the Bahamas. And I got the opportunity to lead the church there for almost 4 years. And
It's
incredible,
not a bad
incredible
gig,
people.
huh?
It's not a bad gig. I'm super
Yeah.
grateful, especially today on a cold day.
Yeah.
I reflect on that. Wish I could
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah.
And then from the Bahamas, we got to go to Athens to lead the campus, and then now we're here in Virginia,
Cool.
leading the church here. And so we are primarily a suburban congregation in the Northern Virginia suburbs.
Which is
Um,
interesting to me because I think what, at least as an observer of the Potomac
mhm,
Valley Church,
mhm,
uh, the thing that I think I recognize the last maybe 3-4 years from the social media exposure, that, and then just knowing some of the folks that have been a part of your team there, Logan and Ashley, and being able to work a
mhm.
little bit with them on some other projects. Just that there's, you say it's a suburban area, but it actually seems to be a group or a community that it's attracting young leaders.
Mhm.
There is certainly a social presence, social media presence. There's also a community presence that you guys are doing there. And you're doing well in that respect, right? An attraction to that style of community and orienting yourself both socially, on different social media platforms and in the community, that it's attracting young leaders. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Even how has that developed the last
Yeah.
7 years?
Yeah, it's totally been God. And I'm really humbled by what God's done and how he's moved. The congregation here really made a very intentional decision um, about uh, about maybe about 5 years ago, that we would commit ourselves to repentance. And we had the opportunity to come here to sit with all the members in the congregation to talk to them about their vision and dream for the church in the next 10 years. And we had that conversation in the fall of 2014. And then coming into 2015, we just did deep teaching and we devote ourselves to prayer and fasting. And September 2015, we fasted for a day congregationally. We fasted for 3 days in October of 2015, 7 days in November. And then we came into 2016 and we took a whole month to do a 21-day fast, but to start the month by really studying out biblical repentance, corporate repentance. And then at the end of the month, on the 31st, we had what you see in the Old Testament, which is a solemn assembly or sacred assembly, where we said we're really going to commit ourselves to being a church that embraces Matthew 22, that loves God with everything in our being and loves our neighbor as ourselves, that embraces Matthew 25, that sees Jesus in the face of every person, and that embraces the fact that those who love God with everything and see Jesus in the face of everyone are called to be disciples who make disciples. And um, that very simple but very clear commitment that we all made has changed everything. And it's what's led us to engage in the community in a very expansive way. We regularly have once a year a big barbecue called the Great Banquet, where we barbecue 1,000 pounds of meat and invite the whole community to come out. We feed everyone together, the homeless, the rich, the poor, give out free bags of groceries and clothes and clothing supplies, and just serve the community. We've been able to help work with local community organizations to help them raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to help people in the most desperate situations. One of our partners, Acts, that we helped to raise some funds. They're the ones that do suicide prevention and take the 911 calls, and are doing just a yeoman's work serving in the community with women and men who face domestic violence. Um, that's also led us to having elected officials who are both Republicans and Democrats, congressmen and state senators and mayors come to church with us, speak to us about building community, and some of them are even worshiping with us now on a consistent basis. And so God's done miraculous things among us, and we've seen the number of disciples multiply. But our focus is not growth; our focus is
Yeah.
health, because we really do believe that, not all growth is healthy. There are lots of groups that just swell, but healthy bodies, they always grow. And so we've really tried to make every effort to keep it simple: 22, 25, 28. Let's be healthy. Let's love everybody. And let's love people without an agenda. Just love people and let God work with it. And
I love
and
that.
we've seen God do it.
And you're saying Matthew 22, 25, and 28, and just kind of
Hmm.
wrapping that into your mission statement, your mantra. What
Hmm.
a great, simple, but profound and effective way, in our faith to see growth happen. That's cool. And I know you guys. I mean, I think that's part of the thing that I was interested in unpacking with you is,
Yeah.
I know you've got the great banquet that you do. I've
Yeah.
seen the Pova Cares videos that you guys are doing with
Hmm.
different members of the community. You mentioned raising large amount of money, and I think I read somewhere it was like $450,000 worth of relief over the last 10 or 12 months here in the pandemic that you've been able to provide. And obviously there's an orientation that you guys have been very intentional about in not being insular in your faith community, but really orienting yourselves out into the city and the region that you're a part of. And I think that's something that I think all of us agree with theologically. Any of us who are followers of Jesus or we're part of church communities, we read in the Bible and we read stories of the church in a city and its effect on the city. We see historically how Christians have always been the creative minority in communities, in cultures where they weren't the largest number of people, but they were this creative minority that
Hmm.
affected the entire culture and societies that they lived in, really through service to the community they were a part of. And it seems like you
Hmm.
guys have really embraced that. And I don't know, I'd be interested to hear, even for you personally, how you've come to kind of wrap your mind around and your heart around that approach to your faith and to your ministry. Was that always with you? Was that with you when you started in the Bronx? Was that with you back in Jamaica as a child? Was there history there along the journey that helped create a heart that was more inclined towards that, and kind of the combination of being a follower of Jesus and being in ministry? How did that all come together for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the Pova Cares effort is probably a great example of that. So, you know, we in that case we have raised lots of money to be able to give for mission work and to be able to serve in the community. But all of the Pova Cares money, none of that was our money. So that was, we have partnered in the community, and we're a founding member of an organization called the Alliance, which networks the business community, the human service community, and just concerned citizens in our community. And so we're able to be a part of that initial effort. And the Alliance was awarded $3 million from our local
Wow.
municipality, Prince William County. So they were awarded $3 million, and I should say we were awarded, the Alliance, that is, was awarded $3 million, and distributed it to 26 different organizations. And initially, we were actually the last organization to be awarded. We're at the bottom of the rung. It's pretty amazing what God did. And we were initially only awarded $75,000. But the mission was to make sure that you could reach people who were impacted by COVID with these CARES funds that the federal government gave to the local municipality, that they gave to a community organization to get it out. And the first $75,000, we're able to meet needs with people in the community within a week. And then they gave us another 75, and then another. And in the course of 2 months, we're able to help distribute 450,000 of those dollars to 217 families that were about to get evicted. and that were, 6 and 7 months behind on their rent,
Wow.
or had medical bills that had piled up because of COVID. They just could not manage. They were drowning in debt.
Hmm.
And I mean, painful situations with single moms and people like right on the edge. And God blessed us to be able to be at a place to take resources that was granted and to be able to meet needs. And it was such
What a
a
cool
miracle.
example. Yeah, of just
Oh my
being a
goodness.
bridge between you know between those worlds of government and commerce and the needy. And the church was able to step in and be a bridge there, be the hands to serve in that way.
Yeah, it's that creative minority that you're talking about. I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. That's a deep commitment that we have, that I have, that my wife has, that our elders here have, that our staff has, that our small group leaders have. That's who we're supposed to be. We're
Yeah.
supposed to be that group that shows what the first century church showed the world 2,000 years ago, in our community, and we believe that's what Christians are called to do everywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
And for
I have
you personally, how does that developed for you over the course of your
Yeah.
following Jesus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So credit where credit's due. I'd say the genesis of it was my father.
Yeah.
My father built a school in rural Jamaica to make sure the
Wow.
kids that who did not have access to education could have it. So my dad taught me that from the beginning, and I saw the way that my dad, interestingly enough, was able to work with Muslim charities to help, kids, whether they were Christian or Muslim or otherwise. So I saw what my dad did as a kid.
Wow.
Um, but then 12 years ago, my personal faith radically changed. Now, 13 years ago, when I went to Indonesia and I saw how the churches in Indonesia are doing this, because I'd never seen a church do it. I've seen my dad do it as a kid. I knew that it made sense, but then I saw the churches in Indonesia serving everyone from every different background, and with no agenda, just loving people. And I saw how it drew the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor, and people could see the love of God.
It's amazing.
And I honestly, I left that trip. I was in a Hope Youth Corps in 2008. I came back. I took that whole fall to read, pray, talk to my wife, and Tasha and I started, um, 2009, with a 40-day fast, and sunrise to sunset fast, just praying for God to make it plain. And since then, God's opened up a great door. We have an active partnership with the churches in Southeast Asia, particularly in Indonesia. I go to Indonesia every year to study what they're doing, and part of my doctoral study is integrating what we're learning here from what we learned from them there. And again, it's what's so humbling about it, Elias, is it's not anything complicated. It's
Hmm.
just loving people and being willing to push yourself outside of your comfort zone to build networks of relationships with people that honestly are quite open. You know, I know that there's a lot of ugliness in politics,
Hmm.
but the politicians themselves, many of them are very good people,
Yeah.
um, that
Well,
want
and
that. Yeah.
no, sorry. I was going to say, I think there's a narrative of the church as, at least from the public eye, can sometimes be critiqued as not being more open-handed to working with the community organizations that already exist, and really developing and fostering healthy relationships in that way. That it seems like you guys have embraced and have really been able to multiply some of the effect of what you're doing. Well, for you, when you came back from Indonesia, and you kind of went on this journey personally, and then thought about applying it, in your local communities, and even there with the Potomac Valley. How has that journey been for the community to kind of go, hey, we're going to really intentionally orient ourselves towards serving the city that we're a part of, the city of that we're going to be the church of the city, and serve the city.
Mhm.
How has that journey gone for the community as a whole?
Yeah, I've been really encouraged. I mean, like anything, you try lots of different things, and lots of different things just don't work. They just flop, you know. So, but in general, the response that we've gotten has just been so amazing. You know, I think people want to talk to people that just want to help other people, you know. And the thing that I learned very early on, you know, working with young people, particularly with teenagers, is that they have a sniff test, and that people are smart, and they might not know how to say it, but if your goal is to come into a community just to, you know, pull the resources out of a community, people can tell. If you're someone that's coming in to build up a community and love up on people and be there for people, people can tell that too. And so I think that's been a big part of what we've had to do as a church, is really change ourselves and change our perspective, that we don't simply want people to come and join our church. We actually want to be the church to the people where we live. And we want people to be made disciples, no
Yeah.
question, because we believe the discipleship results in freedom from the control of sin and eternal life, and a life of purpose. We want people to be right with God, but we are here to be representatives of who God is. And and we've made a lot of mistakes, you know, like a ton of mistakes, but we just keep showing up, and we build relationships with the people that God opens the doors. And we're very intentional to build relationships with, in our area in particular, with Democrats and Republicans, with people in diverse backgrounds, because we're not partisans. We're
Hmm.
Christians. You know,
Right.
we're called to be engaged and be embedded, but we don't want to get entangled in the world. Um, and we don't always get it right, but we definitely give it the best shot we can.
Well, I love that, and I mean, I think the thing that I keep coming back to with a lot of the infighting and partisan narratives that are affecting so much of our cultural moment, right? And whether
Hmm.
you're in the church or out of the church, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, you're affected by that, right? And it seems very binary in that you're going to either be one side or the other, and
Right.
there, and everything has every topic and every brand has real estate on one side or the other, and you're going to have an allegiance to one side or the other no matter what you do. But I love that the church can step into a third space, I like to call it. That Jesus always
Yes.
had a third space.
Yeah.
You read through the Sermon on the Mount, and he kind of takes you can either, you can like oppress other people's bodies, or you can, be totally like celibate and remove yourself from any temptation. Or the third way is you can learn to respect other people's bodies as your own. And like he always provides a third way, right? You don't have to like fight your enemy, and you don't have to run from your enemy. You can actually engage your enemy with love. There's always this third space that he offers.
Hmm.
And I love that the church can step into that space, even
Yep.
in the political arena, even in the local government arenas, and not just say what the third space is, but really model, really be an example of the body of Christ, and entering into that third space, and providing
Yeah.
that live illustration for what it looks like. Um, Man, we need more of that. We all
Yeah.
could use more of that.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree. I'm just saying amen. I agree
yeah.
with you. I think that you've nailed it. I think that is so critical, man. And it's, that's it.
Yeah. For you, what's some of the tensions that you've recognized, even for you personally, or for those who are part of your community, as you've made this journey into the community, right? And in bridging, your local church with other organizations. What have been some of the tensions that have come up for you guys there?
Yeah, I mean, so we are very racially diverse, and we're very politically diverse. And so I think a natural tension is the tendency for people to not want to choose the third way or the middle way or a cruciformed approach, because it is so much more, um, it's so much safer to choose the path of either of just being unengaged in the world. Um, So sometimes the tension is people misreading our motives and our efforts. Sometimes the tension is us struggling with with how to balance everything and our approach. Um, and I'm really really grateful that we have amazing elders and two amazing elders and their wives, and we have uh, 20 a deaconship of 20 deacons that they
Wow.
step up. They are a force to be reckoned with. I mean, they get it done. And our family group of leaders, our Bible talk leaders, our small group leaders, we have 20 small groups that they also are a force to be reckoned with, and they get done. So I think we've had to struggle to listen to each other, to respect differences, um, and while not being toothless in our kind of engagement, because that's the other
Mm.
side of the equation. Sometimes, respecting differences means that you compromise to the point that you have no conviction, and so we've really decided that we want to take a posture where we have deep conviction to follow Jesus and to extend our arms to those on the right just as much as we do to those on the left, and then let God sort out the difference.
I love that. Um, what's amazing is that you have 20. How many deacons did you say you have?
So we're really fortunate. We have 10 deacons and 10 deaconesses.
Wow.
So a deaconship
So you
of
guys got a
20.
stacked bench.
You know, they're really great
That's
people. And,
amazing.
as we've been praying and fasting, we pray at 9:38 every morning and 9:38 every night. Please, God,
Yeah.
send us workers.
Yeah.
And some of those folks are folks that got baptized here recently in the past couple of years, past 6, 7 years. Some
Yeah.
were here all along, and their faith got reignited,
Yeah.
and it allows us to really we try to make every effort so everyone has a seat on the right seat on the bus. Some people are really good at organizing people to serve people, and some people are
Mm-hmm.
really good at leading a discussion and
Yeah.
leading a small group, and some people are really good at making sure that all works, and so it's been cool to see everybody step up and do their part, but we got a lot of work to do, Elias.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want, I'm telling you the good stuff.
Sure.
We would tell you, and we say it every week. We are a church of really messed up people
Yeah.
just trying to bring the message.
Well, that's all of us. I think um, there is no perfect group of people, right? And as soon as if there was, as soon as I showed up, it would cease to be a perfect group of people, right? That's kind of the
Me and you
the
both.
tendency. Yeah, that's the tendency of things. But I do love the emphasis on. I think about the scriptures like 1 Peter 2:12. He says, "Hey, just live such good lives among them," right? That our church communities are not meant to be kind of these insular monasteries somewhere that exist outside of our community, but they're meant to be vibrant communities within the city, within the community, the greater community
Hmm.
that live among that greater community and do life
Hmm.
with that greater community. And I imagine even in that there's tensions, right? I know
Yeah.
there's tensions for me about how does that look to engage and to be a Christian and to not, like you said, to not water down my convictions, outside of my community in the church, but even with people outside,
Hmm.
of the people that I'm reaching, the people that I'm trying to
Hmm.
bridge. Uh, can you speak to that at all? I mean, how's that journey been for you, or maybe for some of the Christians that there, as they've kind of had to navigate some of that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it was one that we've been learning a lot from Indonesia about in particular. I think one of the big shifts for us is that we have an expansive community in Potomac Valley. So anyone that identifies with our community that either grew up in our church or wants to be a part of our community is welcome to be a part of the Big C community. But we have a core of disciples, a devoted core of disciples that are the small d disciple. And what we do is in folks that are in the community, kids that grow up in our church, people that want to be a part of the community but are not yet ready to commit. to a life of biblical discipleship. Everybody can serve, everybody can be a part, everybody can be engaged. And that's been a key distinction for us as we've tried to make sense of that tension that you're talking about is, how do you walk carefully and patiently with people as they're trying to make sense of difficult things, and maybe they have views that are very different or might even be diametrically opposed um, to what we see in the biblical narrative. We still want to make sure that they feel a true sense of acceptance and love, while we have to retain a deep sense of conviction and standard based on the scriptures. But being very forthright about what we think and where we stand and what we teach and why we believe it, but also being very open is how we've tried to navigate that tension. Because real tension points. Like last summer is a great example. I mean, we're in the midst of a new civil rights movement, and last summer was definitely a summer of discontent and of dissent. And in our church, there are people that are on literally every side of the issue, and we want to make sure that none of those voices are being muted. I mean, provided that they're respectful, that none of those voices are being muted, um, but and everyone feels welcomed, um, but also that all the different positions are being heard and respected, and that is fraught with difficulty. I mean, I can tell you honestly, last summer I had people
That's a
on.
brave venture.
It's crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
you're either too conservative or too progressive or too,
Yeah.
and the truth is, I'm just a person. We're just people.
Right.
All we can do is be who God's called us to be, and it is that third way that you're talking about. Hey, we're going to extend our hands to everybody. We're going to love
Yeah.
everyone. We're going to respect everyone, but we have standards, and
Yeah.
these are what they are, and they involve following Jesus.
Yeah. And I think it's important to not make any apologies for the diversity of your community, right?
Hmm.
I've had conversations where um, people kind of want to know is your community, which side does your community lean towards, right? And because if they lean towards this side, I don't know if I could be there, or if they lean towards that side, I don't know if I could be there, or if they
Yeah.
lean towards this side, how far on that side, because I really want the whole community to think like me.
Right.
And I've told people, man, the beauty of the church is that it's diverse, and I'll
Yes.
make no apologies for the fact that I go to church with people on this side and on that side, and I pass the communion tray to both,
Yes.
and that's the beauty of what I think the church can be, in a
I
community.
agree.
Well, let me ask you this: as you think about people who are not following Jesus, people who are maybe on the
Hmm.
fence, or
Yeah.
maybe even critical of the church, and maybe even have a critical eye towards the teachings of Jesus. Like, why does having an orientation towards a greater community and a service towards your community, why does that matter? Why does that matter to our humanity and to our flourishing as human beings?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say to people that are critical of the church and critical of, Big C church and of Christianity as we know it, I understand. I
Hmm.
have a lot of critical views towards the church.
Yeah.
I just do, and I did not grow up Christian. I mean, I have a heritage with a family with a deep tradition in Christianity, and also in Catholicism, and but I didn't grow up Christian. I grew up as somebody that was seeking after God, that was able to come in contact with Jesus through the scriptures, and my faith is one of living out an Abrahamic faith of following Jesus.
Hmm.
Um, so I understand, and I just encourage people not to let the detractors or bad examples stop you
Yeah.
from reading the biblical narrative and talking to practitioners of discipleship, not just
Yeah.
professors of discipleship. Um, that being said, I think the orientation towards being concerned in the greater community is so critical to everything it means to be a Christian. Because I think the biggest thing I've heard from talking to people in their most like 2 a.m. voice is that I don't care about any of this stuff. I just care that people care about people,
Right.
you know. And so, I've seen people get up in arms when you say Black Lives Matter, for instance, and they do actually matter. And I have no problem saying Black Lives Matter. I'm not aligning myself with the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm just saying I care about Black people and what they're going through.
Yeah.
I also care about Filipino people when there's a typhoon, and
Right.
I care about Indonesians when there's an
Right.
earthquake. I care about Haitians when there's a mudslide. Like, I care about the world because we have a shared humanity. We're all from one family. Um, and if one part of our family suffers, all parts suffer. And
Yeah.
so I think um, it behooves Christians not to get caught up in the arguments of the day, but to show compassion. And where you have an opportunity to show compassion, not simply with words, but with action, that goes much further than anything else. Because,
Yeah.
right now there are 7 billion people. And in the next 30 years, conservative estimates, there'll be 10 billion people. And so when we think about our ministry formation, we're asking ourselves, what kind of church will people 30 years from now be able to look at and look back on
Mm.
and say, in the most critical moments, these people, they were Christians, not by what they said, but by how they lived. And they were honest that they didn't get it right. They were messed up. They're flawed, but man, they're really trying to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And
No.
so that's a driving force. So I think serving the community, showing compassion, avoid foolish arguments, is what I would encourage Christians to do. Like no one really cares about all these heady arguments. People care that you care, and if they can see that you care, they'll believe your faith
Yeah.
by what they see, by the evidence of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could go down many rabbit holes with what you just said that are all really important, and we'll have to save them for a different podcast. But I love what you said about not just professors of the faith, but practitioners,
Mhm.
and I think that's such a key distinction that I know for people that I come in contact with and friends that I have that are not followers of Jesus, family members that I have that are not followers of Jesus, they're not really they're not concerned with how well I can explain my theology, what mental agreements I have assented to say, yes, I believe this is truth or not. What they're really concerned with is how are my human to human relationships? That's
Yes.
the fruit, right, of my life. How's the fruit of your life really? And that's what matters. And I think that's what people are looking for, right? Even kind of the modern day church that's non-religious church has become community service, right? There's just something in it for us as humans that when we engage in that, there's a human to human connection, a need being met on both ends, and there's something that comes alive in us. And I think practitioners of Jesus, we know that, right? We get that because we go, man, actually
Yep.
Jesus, he spelt that out like in explicit teachings, but then he implicitly lived that out. And as we apprentice under this way, we get to experience that in multiple ways, right? Not just in community service, but in all kinds of other interactions that we have human to human. We get to experience that flourishing, our souls, our minds, our hearts coming alive. This has been a great conversation. My last question for you is, for those who are following Jesus, who are trying to be practitioners, and they're in their local community, and maybe the church that they're a part of doesn't have a deep bench of 20 deacons and 4 elders and people that are really have already kind of made some of those inroads with their community. What's one practical thing a follower of Jesus can begin to do today or this week when it comes to being a light in their community, when it comes to engaging in that way?
Absolutely. I think a practical thing is get to know your neighbors. love upon your neighbors. Love your neighbors. Begin with Matthew 22. Love God with everything. Start your day with God and get to know your neighbors. Love your neighbors. Love the people that are around you. I believe that we are, without a doubt, in the greatest time in human history and the greatest time for the church. We're at a 500-year moment of transformation. About 500 years ago, Martin Luther was initiating what would become the Protestant Reformation. And I believe that we're at a radical reformation of the church right now. And I think it starts with us just knowing the people that live around us, loving the people that are in our homes and in our lives and in our communities. And God has an amazing way of using our small choices to make a really big impact.
Awesome. Love that. Well, Will Archer, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a great conversation, very helpful, very encouraging, very insightful. Where can people find more information about what you guys are doing or follow you
Yeah.
guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Please. We try to be as accessible as possible. You can go to our website, potomacvalleychurch.com. You can, follow us on Instagram. You can, check us out on Facebook. We try to be as accessible as possible and as responsive as possible. So feel free to connect with us. And we definitely are very grateful. I'm very humbled that you'd asked me to be on this podcast with you and have this conversation with you, and very inspired by the work that y'all are doing there, and learning a lot from what you're doing there. We're trying to be the flavor of the city here, just like you're being the flavor of the city there in Austin. So
Love it.
thank you for
Thanks so
asking.
much.
Appreciate you.